Weavile has, by virtue of its offensive dual stab, a combination of Dark and Ice, slices through the most common defensive core in Ubers, which is Yveltal, Eternatus, and Duskmane Necrozma, also referred to as the Yen core, because it is typically it's a defensive core for most teams. And the reason that is that if you don't have Yveltal or something similar, then you get ran over by Calyrex. If you don't have Duskmane, you get ran over by Xerneas. And if you don't have Eternatus, then you can get ran over by like Scarf Kyogre, for example. And obviously that's not always true, but it's kind of that's one of the main reasons that they're so as common as they are, right? Because not everyone uses Calyrex, but if you don't use Yveltal or something with that defensive niche, then you're going to be taken advantage of really easily by anyone who is using Calyrex. So that's why those three are so common, and then typically the last three will have less defensive utility or may not have reliable recovery, for example. So Weavile really slices through that core because of its its Ice and Dark stab combination. And if something like Duskmane Necrozma does stay in and eats that Dark stab, then Xerneas is potentially going to sweep, because most of the time Duskmane is the Xerneas check, and you can check out my Xerneas video about that. But so because of that, you can reliably force switches, or more reliably force switches, which you can take advantage of course, by double switching using Swords Dance or whatever. And so we're going to use that to our advantage, but that doesn't mean that it's a free ride, because a lot of people run things like Xerneas or Kyogre, which are good checks to Weavile, and also gets KO'd by a Light Breeze, so it's not really defensively useful. However, Dark typing is notable because you can 1v1 Calyrex, and you can eat like knockoffs. So it's not the worst. It's not as bad as Cloister, but it's got pretty good. Just by virtue, Dark typing is it's okay. So it has its uses. And so we're running triple Axle knockoff. With Life Orb, you can also run Sash on Weavile, but with a Life Orb plus 2 triple Axle can potentially KO even a defensive Xerneas, which is one of the more common things to stand in its way. But however, Weavile typically doesn't sweep necessarily; it sort of just punches holes into the team. And so, like I said, if they check it with Duskmane, it opens the door for Xerneas. If they, for some reason, let their Yveltal die because they don't have a better switch in, then Calyrex can sweep. And so you can see how it can force uncomfortable plays from the opponent, because they can't really usually rely on the typical defensive core to deal with Weavile. And so that's one of the strengths of it. And its speed obviously is great. It's got usable attack stat. It's kind of below average in Ubers, 125 or whatever it is. Or 120, sorry, but it gets the job done, and you can't underestimate just coverage, right? Because even though these are all Ubers, they're weak to cover, they're weak to certain types, and having stab on that type is going to be most of the time good enough. So Weavile, that's its niche, right? It's or one of the things that makes it really good is just it slices through that core. And then Cloister is, we don't always lead Cloister, but he can be a good lead, and he shell smashes, and then if you try to sucker punch on this variant, then you can predict that and use spikes. But again, if you try to check it with Necrozma, you're risking getting swiped by Xerneas. So another thing that makes it good. Now Cloister dislikes Scarfers a lot, and like Marshadow priority. So, but it typically gets 1 KO, and then or it gets up a lot of spikes. Like it gets a stall team. That's one thing it's really good at. And one thing I really hated back when I was playing a lot of defensive teams was dealing with Cloister, because you can't. The typical defoggers, Yveltal and Ho-Oh, don't want to deal with Cloister because it has ice and in this case water stab, or even worse, Rock Blast for Ho-Oh in some cases. So it's reliable, especially to install at getting those spikes up. So that's really good. And you'll see a lot of games actually get closed out by Cloister. Like if for some reason they lose their Scarfer, they don't have any speed, then it can be very, very dangerous. So Scarfers are really good against it. But yeah, and it typically has a good lead matchup, like against Aerodactyl. You can play those mind games, like if they taunt and you Ice Spear, then it's dead and they don't get rocks up. If they don't taunt and you get Shell Smash up, then usually their team gets hammered by Cloister. So, but you'll see more in the replays. It puts in a lot of work. Yeah, and then Xerneas is like kind of, it's the sweeper. It's after you've pinned your opponent into a situation where they have to rely on Duskmane, for example, or and it takes damage, then Xerneas can sweep, or they just can't use it at all, and they might get swept by something else. So it benefits from Weavile, it benefits from Cloister, in that those guys are hard to check. And if you do want to check them, you're paying the price of opening yourself up. So I like Focus Blast because it takes would-be checks like Ferrothorn and like Melmetal, two Pokemon that Cloister and Weavile actually don't like dealing with, and it KOs them. So that's one of the merits of Focus Blast, and I really like it a lot. And of course, you got to have that 88 speed to... it's actually just set up on Marshadow, so if they use Rock Tomb, you're still faster than it. And anyway, then we have Calyrex. So Calyrex takes advantage of the fact that if they sacrifice their Yveltal for some reason, or it gets especially low, then they're going to be vulnerable to Calyrex. And then and this set in particular is freaking amazing because Encore just takes advantage of the fact that a lot of like offensive Yveltal will end on Sucker Punch. And so if you Encore that Sucker Punch, you can Nasty Plot, and if they stay in the whole time, they're going to run out of Sucker Punch PP. So keep Encoring them. If they switch out, they risk, getting KO'd. And you can say, well, they could predict like that you're not going to Astral Barrage into a Sucker Punch, which is true. But typically what it does is it allows me to switch into Xerneas and like I can Encore an offensive Yveltal into Sucker Punch or Knockoff, or like Knockoff, for example, right? Then they can't taunt me. It really takes advantage of Yveltal like crazy. It's really good. And if my Cloister's still alive and they're Encored into a Sucker Punch, and let's say I Astral Barrage straight into it and die, then my Cloister's setting up on that Yveltal, and that's a really bad situation for them. So it's just really, really good. And it's a great way to deal with... It takes advantage of offensive Yveltal or just anything with Sucker Punch. All right, then we have our own Yveltal. So this is where we get into the more defensive side of the team. It's an offensive Yveltal, but still serves its defensive niche in dealing with Calyrex, not letting us get ran over by it. Also having Defog, which is good against maintaining our Focus Sash and stuff like that. So that's why I find it necessary. And then a Life Orb. Some people use Black Glasses. I think I'm just using Life Orb because a Life Orb Sucker Punch will one-shot a Darmanitan, Scarf Darmanitan, whereas Black Glasses most likely won't, if I'm correct. So that's why I'm using that here. But it's mostly just keep us from getting ran over by Calyrex, punish them for not having a Tyrannus, stuff like that. Yeah, and then Duskmane also is our Xerneas check and has a lot of offense to it. And yeah, that's pretty much the team.
Looking at this guy's team, he's got a trap team trying to facilitate his Xerneas, obviously, and his Scarf Darmanitan. So ideally for him, he traps my Necrozma and then sweeps me with Xerneas. So on the flip side, however, he does not have a Scarf Calyrex, which can be bad sometimes. I can mean, for one thing, means that he doesn't have a Scarf Revenge Killer for Cloister. It means that he doesn't have, can't chip a low HP Xerneas at when it's at +2. So we'll see how I take advantage of that throughout this game. So for one thing, I'm running Sash Weavile here, and Pickpocket is going to steal his Choice Scarf. So that's one less check to, well, it just makes it really slow. And so he's taking a risky move to risk damage on your Necrozma when I'm threatening a Xerneas sweep. Well, that's what he opts to do. And yeah, so he doesn't want to stay in with Yveltal here, because if we trade our Yveltals, then I have the advantage because I have a Calyrex and he doesn't. So I predict that. I'm gonna switch to Weavile, and then okay, so he gets some momentum back here, and I don't want Rocks up because of my Sash and my Weavile, so I'm gonna deny that, and then switch to Necrozma. So he right here, I knew that because Magnezone always runs Balloon so it doesn't get killed by Earthquake, and then it can Magnet Rise. So predicting that, I'm going to just hard Sunsteel Strike, and then because I'm faster, because my Necrozma is very fast, it actually has max speed. I don't know if well, he's faster than it, and so he doesn't predict that, and so I end up KOing. So he doesn't get the trap. Let's see how much that matters, but I'm gonna sack my Weavile. So why do I go for the Xerneas here? Honestly, I'm not sure, but I guess because he doesn't have a speed check. So if I end up KOing this Necrozma, then I would win, but I don't get that. But still, I have Cloister and I have Calyrex, so here I'm gonna, like I said, no breathing room for the opponent's Necrozma. Everyone on my team is gonna force them out, and so I don't know if he's not running Sucker Punch, which is and this is the price you pay, but yeah, and so this game just ends up in a Cloister sweep, because, for example, if you had a Scarf Calyrex right here, then he wouldn't be subject to this, but because he doesn't have a Scarf Calyrex, and because he doesn't have Sucker Punch, then he's really vulnerable to this Cloister sweep. I do get one crit inside of that Icicle Spear, which is not the most unreliable thing ever, because it does hit 5 times, but yeah, so just cleaning up with Cloister in this game. So this is really just the fault, I would say, of just the team structure of his, just being vulnerable to this sort of thing. But you can't blame someone for being weak to Cloister, because it's just not really that common with Pokemon. Okay, so the next one, here we sort of demonstrate, well, if we look at his team, he has the extra Weavile and Cloister check in Kyogre, which is good for him. He has extra Xerneas check in Ho-Oh, and then a standard team from there. So it's not exactly an unfair matchup for him or for me, but we'll see what happens, because this should be a tight game. I don't think anyone is heavily favored just by virtue of the teams, but so obviously he's smart and he's going to switch out, because he'll be vulnerable to Xerneas otherwise. So this game is kind of, well, let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm gonna get this is a risky play here, because if it's Scarf, then I die. But maybe I had played him before and I knew that he wasn't. But his Kyogre is taking the damage here. It's a defensive set, and one reason I run Photon Geyser is because it hits Kyogre really hard, which means that Weavile and Cloister are a lot better off. So that's why I run that. I didn't mention that. And then we're going to do some heavy chip to this Necrozma, so it's a little risky to do versus my team. And then, so I'm going to force it out with the Yveltal, defog these rocks, because I still got my Weavile and my Kyrex. And so, from the looks of it, he's got... let's see what that's here. Defog. Yeah, there we go. And then I'm stacking my Yveltal here. Now, I can kind of afford to do that just because I have a lot of Sash users. Because I have... I think it was a defensive Eternatus, which is why I decided to send in Weavile, because it would be faster most of the time. And then he's going to stack his Necrozma, which is... it's going to make him a little weak to Xerneas, especially last turn Xerneas, because then I don't have to worry about Whirlwind. But... so we can see just how much damage Weavile can do to Ho-Oh. And he probably should have Sacred Fired, obviously, because then he still have Ho-Oh, but... and he has to switch out because I'm Sash, and he probably assumes I'm Sash, because a lot of hyper offense teams have Sash Kyrex, so we're just going from there. So here I'm going for a Xerneas sweep in the taunt. I don't know. I think, yeah, he reveals U-turn here. So if he didn't have U-turn, then he would probably be in big trouble. Yeah, he would be. But he does have U-turn, so unfortunately I just gotta do some chip here. And so because he doesn't have Sucker Punch, then he ends up actually it doesn't matter. Oh yeah, it does. It forces him to keep his Kyrex in, and so because he doesn't have Sucker Punch, he's gonna get swept by Cloister because he has no way to like revenge kill it or anything. And so I think the best thing he could do here is flamethrow the Cloister and hope to burn it, but he doesn't do that, so he's just gonna get swept by it. So Eternatus is dead, and unless he doesn't have defog on his Yveltal, but I can kind of assume that he does, and so yeah, you can just kind of assume he doesn't have Sucker Punch. So yeah, that's Cloister sweep. All right, next one. So this stab ice just kind of destroys this person's team. It's a very common team structure that you see a lot. It's a hyper offensive webs team, and it's a webs team. And so, some of the benefits of having taunt here is that we can stop stuff like this, deny the webs, and then force them to switch out. And so here we're gonna see. Okay, I thought I was gonna use Nasty Plot, but okay, Nasty Plot there, and then I guess I didn't want him to. I didn't want to hit the Slayer Pluff down to the Sash because then it'll get webbed. So, gonna Encore here. Amazing. So I can just press Astral Barrage because if he Sucker Punches, then I send in Cloister and destroy his team. Break that down in the Sash, and then he explodes. So, how's this game? So he's gonna send his Cosmo, send in my rocks, break his Kyrex's Sash, and then he's not. Yeah, so he's gonna get Sucker Punched by Yveltal, and you can kind of assume he doesn't have Morning Sun because it's hyper offense team. So you kind of just spam Sucker Punch. Okay, yeah. So that last turn, he decided to hit me, and then Landorus just gets KO'd. Not the strongest Pokemon in terms of damage output sometimes. Let's see. So it's looking like he's gonna get swept by Cloister because his Yveltal is gonna be dead to rocks, and I already know his Kyrex is Sash because they're always Sash on these kinds of teams. And if it wasn't Cloister, it would be Weavile then. So, yeah. Also Xerneas checks Kyrex +1 if it's at full HP. So yeah, that's another Cloister sweep for you. Put in a lot of work. And then let's go here. And then here we have my final game to rank 6. So let's go ahead and check this out. So he's got a you can kind of assume that's probably a Specs Kyogre and a Scarf Dracovish. And I guess Landorus is a good Zekrom switching, considering he's kind of weak to that. So some notes about the structure of his team. So his first mistake is letting me heavily chip this Necrozma, even if he's trying to just get a Thunder Wave. So yeah, he's just in a bad spot here from the get-go. Unfortunately, I don't hit a very strong triple axle there. But I know that Cloister takes less than 50 from Scarf Dracovish outside of range, so I'm going to go ahead and set up on that and just, put a dent in his team. He'll probably have to check me with Kyogre, but as we'll see, the first thing he's going to do is intimidate with Landorus. And, he doesn't really need Landorus for anything, not that it's very good, except against Decimated Necrozma, but so he goes with his Kyogre here. Liquidation gets that rain boosted hit. So I'm going to try to set up the Xerneas sweep here by sending in my Kyrex. He's gonna he's gonna knock off here or something. Oh, U-turn. So I guess okay. So I go for another Astral Barrage, and then because he doesn't have Sucker Punch, he's gonna get swept by Calyrex. So Calyrex is crazy. Yeah, so 1733 right there. And then you can see, one thing I find interesting is you can see the end result of all my games. So I end on a Necrozma sweep, Cloister sweep, presumably a Xerneas sweep here, Calyrex sweep, Xerneas sweep, another Calyrex sweep. So yeah, it's just it's mainly just taking advantage of this the ice, the very dangerous ice stab in this tier, and then forcing them to certain things to get chipped, or just taking advantage of that until one of our other guys can sweep, because we were able to put pressure on their defensive core that made them rely on things in a suboptimal way that just leaves them vulnerable to my sweepers. So yeah, that's the team, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. And I'm having a lot of fun playing offense, so definitely I'm going to keep working on stuff like that as I sort of grow as an offensive player, and round out my skill set. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and thanks for watching.